This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated. Jihadist Psychopath by Dr. Jamie Glazov. I will tell you as an expert on Sharia, as a former child bride who has suffered and faced my own jihadi psychopath, I want you to go and order this book on Amazon.com or go to jamieglazov.com. Get a copy for yourself. You know why? Because you need to be equipped with the knowledge to fight our enemies so you can save your daughters and your granddaughters from future of Islam.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. This evening, Ilhan Omar's Sharia hate and deception. Backed by popular demand, John Guandolo, the president of UnderstandingTheThreat.com. John, what an honor to have you back.
Thanks very much, as always. Appreciate it, Jamie.
John, we're in very interesting times. So many people are just surprised and shocked that a Muslim congresswoman adheres to Sharia and hates Jews.
Yes, I mean, this is what you and I have had so many discussions about, Jamie. And what we're seeing now are the true colors of many of these people who purport to be kind, decent people. But in fact, they are Sharia adherent Muslims, and they do what Sharia adherent Muslims do. And a part of core Islamic teaching is Jew hatred and anti-Semitism.
Well, absolutely, John. And look, I even want to ask this question, and it's interesting that because the left and Islamic supremacists now control the boundaries of our discourse, even when I'm going to ask it, I immediately can sense the, oh, racist, bigot, prejudiced, right away shouting. So I'm going to begin with this. Ilhan Omar wears a hijab, and Americans actually voted her into office. And so aside from all the BS about that I'm implying something racist and bigoted, John, the hijab represents, first and foremost, in general, a commitment to Sharia law. So can you speak about this for a minute, and also the phase we're in our society where Americans are voting for someone that's committed to Islamic law?
Yes, well, there's at least three pieces to what you just asked, so let me try to take them in order. First, whether it's the hijab or the call for halal foods in schools or universities, you know, elementary, junior high, high schools or universities, or it is, you know, the wearing of the full burqa, or women only hours at public pools, or whatever. Those are not religious accommodations. Those are legal submissions to Sharia. That is the key. We are not talking about a First Amendment right. We were talking about where Sharia directly contradicts the Constitution. And I'll just start with Article 6, which says, this Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. Muslims are taught in Islamic schools all over the United States that Sharia, this is a quote, Sharia is the law of the land. The law of the land is the Sharia of Allah. The basis of the political and legal system is the Sharia of Allah. These are all quotes. And the duty of Muslim citizens is to be loyal to Islamic states. That comes out of what Islam is all about, the most prominently used textbook for 12-year-olds in U.S. Islamic schools. So first of all, you are correct in saying that the hijab, this is not just a freedom of expression issue. But you said one other thing that I think is really important, and I know your viewers are astute enough to get this, and that is when we talk about the Marxists and the Islamic movement coming after anybody that speaks truth, remember that the enforcers for the Marxist movement are the establishment Republicans. They're the ones who enforce the PC narrative of don't offend Muslims. You know, as we look around the United States, it's Republicans who shut down these discussions in state legislatures. It's Republicans who shut down this discussion. It was the Republican Party that shut down Congressman Michelle Bachmann when she raised legal concerns about Muslim Brotherhood counterintelligence penetrations into power nodes in our government. Those were Republicans. Those were Marco Rubio, John McCain, John Boehner, and those folks. This is important because what you're saying is very true, but they would not be able to advance as rapidly as they are without the establishment Republican leadership.
Sad times we're in. So let's get to this also, John, just in terms of, I guess we could call it just plain ignorance and willful blindness. So Ilhan Omar is now making these anti-Semitic remarks, and I forget the word now. I'm not sure that this is anything new, but somehow, you know, all these people are just so shocked and surprised. And, you know, so first of all, we know that the Democratic Party has always been comfortable with anti-Semitism. It's only because they got caught right now with her in their ranks. And in terms of, you know, the conservative media, thank God, shining a light on this. But John, this should also be no surprise because of what the Quran says about Jews. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes. If we look at Sharia, Islamic law, and to be clear, Sharia is the law's divine law, according to Islam, that every Muslim is obliged under penalty of death to follow. And they're obliged to follow it completely. It's actually a capital crime in Islam to try to partially implement the Sharia. Now, the Sharia can be implemented over time in an increasing amount. That is actually in keeping with the example of the Prophet Muhammad. But the Quran calls for enmity between the Jews and the Muslims. And Allah is the one in the Quran who says, I am putting enmity between you and the Jews. And it is the Prophet Muhammad himself who beheaded up to 900 Jews after the Battle of the Trench. It is Islamic law that commands warfare against all Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians until the entire world is under Islamic law, under Allah's divine law. That's the whole purpose of Islam. And so when people argue the point, I will just kind of leave this on the table, is when they argue the point and say, well, there are many versions of Islam. You know, we have all these moderate Muslims that are out there and they want reform. The problem is when we chase something that is impossible to achieve and is non-existent, i.e. a different version of Islam, then you do not build a national defense policy or a strategy for victory in a war based on a fantasy. And that's why 17 years after 9/11, we are still losing this war. Because it's very clear in Islamic doctrine that Jew hatred and anti-Semitism is built in because it's in the Quran and God said it according to them. And the Prophet Muhammad said it. I've been commanded to war against the Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians. And then he went out and spent the last 10 years of his life doing it, including, as I just said, beheading hundreds of Jews after the Battle of the Trench.
Thank you, John. You know, there's one issue that I've had very fascinating discussions with certain Muslims down on 3rd Street Promenade when we were, you know, getting some information out with the Counter Jihad Coalition, and they would come up and yell and scream at us. And there was some dialogues that we had about this issue, and you've written about this on your site at Understanding the Threat. Also, there's a reason why Jews in the Muslim world are often referred to as apes and pigs. And as you document at your site in the Quran, we've got, chapter 2, verses 63 to 66. We've got chapter 5, surahs 59 to 60, and chapter 7, surah 166. Allah turns the Jews into apes and pigs. So there's also the belief that, I could never get this straight, because I wanted to logically just talk about this with you for a minute, the belief here. Because I've asked this of some of the Muslims that I've debated with. Jews are descended from apes and pigs because they were turned into apes and pigs. And over how much time has this happened? And why are some Jews now in human form? Could you explain how Islam sees this in a logical sense?
Oh, you're asking for a logical response to an illogical teaching.
But the teaching is that Allah at one point turned Jews into apes and pigs.
Correct.
Okay. And so Jews are descended from apes and pigs according to Islamic theology, and we know that Hamas and other leaders in the Islamic world say this often, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what is the belief here?
Well, you've got several, if you look at the 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence, the dominant teaching is that Allah turned the Jews into apes and pigs. And so you've got some Jews are apes and pigs, and some Jews, the descendants are still in human form. I've seen in textbooks, like Palestinian textbooks, where they teach about it one way, and you can hear scholars on Memory TV discuss it, that they're descended from the apes and pigs. So there's a variety of teaching, but the key here that is the universal teaching in Islam is that the Jews are much lower than the Muslims, and they're unworthy. As a matter of fact, we have historical examples where Jews were not allowed to go out in the rain because water might touch them and be on the ground, and Muslims might get that on the bottom of their feet. These are things that have happened over history. Remember, it's the Muslim community, it's Sharia, that requires the non-Muslims to wear symbols on their clothing. This is where Hitler got the idea. So this was not a Nazi idea. This is a Muslim idea to mark the Jews, to distinguish them from the Muslims in the community.
The tragic comedy ensues, John, and we share our just, I don't even know if amazement is the right word or being appalled, but the questions that are not asked by our media of these individuals. For instance, Ilhan Omar. When is a journalist going to ask her about what we were just talking about? When will a journalist ask her, what do you think about the massacre of the Banu Karazai tribe? What do you think of Marzeh Ibrahimi, the Iranian girl, half of her face acid attack because she wasn't wearing a hijab? The murder of Aqsa Parvez in Canada for not wearing a hijab by her father. Maïdeh Hojabri, Iranian 18-year-old girl in prison today for not wearing a hijab. I could go on and on. Ilhan Omar has never asked these questions by Don Lemon, by Rachel Maddow, by journalists on the street. Why is that?
Because they're not actually journalists. They are acting as agents for a hostile movement in the United States. And I think that's something that your viewers, I just encourage them. You know, I've said it on your show before, this idea of hashtag fake news. It is not fake news. These people are intentionally putting out stories. Now we know it from all the things that came out when we saw in the election, where the Democrat leadership was specifically working with the media. The amount of people in the media that are presidents of ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, who are all hard left Marxists. And so they're not searching for the truth. They are working to push forward a movement in this country that is destructive of liberty, that is destructive of the constitutional republic, and is not in any way interested in the truth. And we've seen evidence of that over and over and over again. And so I think the better question is, when is the Department of Justice going to begin investigating and indicting many of these journalists for participating in a conspiracy to overthrow the United States with the Marxists and the jihadists?
John, speaking of overthrowing the United States, because again, because I study the left, I can already hear what they're going to be screaming when I ask you this. Oh, racist, bigot, white supremacist, etc. But in your article, you point out the truth that Omar, Keith Ellison, Rashida Tlaib, what book did they make their oath of office on?
They all, including Andre Carson, they all swore their oath of allegiance on the Quran.
Right now. And right now, the left, of course, oh, That's just another holy book. What's the truth of the matter? What does that mean?
Well, it means that they're literally taking an oath at the same time they're utterly disregarding the oath, because the Quran is utterly incompatible with a free society. Sharia is absolutely diametrically opposed to liberty, to our Constitution, and to the founding principles in the Declaration. And I just want to go back to something you just said. When the left says, oh, it's just another religion, I will remind everyone, it was Bill Clinton, it was George W. Bush, it was President Barack Obama, all of them who said, one God, three Abrahamic faiths. It was George Bush's State Department that pushed that held gatherings at the State Department saying the Quran was just another holy book like the Torah, like the Holy Bible. This is what I'm talking about when I say the enforcers of the PC narrative, the Marxists rely on the establishment Republicans, because without it, they don't get what they're doing. The Marxists are not able to make the headway they're making. And remember, the Marxists are the hammers for the Islamic counterstate, the Islamic movement in the United States. So the linchpin is the Republican establishment, which is why we've seen, Mark Levin, smart guy, patriot, who brings on moderate Muslim like Zuhdi Jasser, claiming he's a great guy. Why Judge Jeanine Pirro, great lady, patriot, brings on Kanta Ahmed, an enemy. She is batting for the other side. This is a woman who says on public television, on Fox News, on numerous occasions when she's on Fox News, things that are objectively untrue about Islam. The latest thing she just said is that Islam reveres the Torah and Judaism. This is, and of course, Judge Jeanine is going, yeah, nodding her head. This is nonsense. So it's conservative Republicans that are, to me, the greatest concern.
Lord have mercy. John, when was the last time these individuals invited you on their program?
I have not been on Fox News for over 8-9 years.
Before we go, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, this Carson character, Ellison, every time I open up, the internet or read the news, they've always increasingly got more and more to do with the Council on American Islamic Relations, with CARE. And CNN and MSNBC are not going to do a 1-hour feature report on what CARE is. John, what's going on?
Well, again, we've been putting out recently letters that we've obtained from members of Congress where you've got CARE letters literally from members of Congress to CARE's headquarters saying, thank you, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for all you do. And this is, and what's interesting is all the letters we have from members of Congress openly supporting CARE, 100% are Democrats. We have Trevor Loudon's list of the 50 most easily identifiable members of Congress who are Marxists, either overt socialists or communists. 100% of them are Democrats. So there's a real, this is going to sound understated, but there's a real problem in the Democrat Party. The real truth is the leadership, they're pushing a hardcore anti-American Marxist agenda. And there are things that the Department of Justice can do legally. But look, the evidence is CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is Hamas. They were founded by the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood's Palestine Committee, which is Hamas in the United States.
This is a Muslim Brotherhood front group, and as you say, Hamas linked it. We could go on and on about CARE, but this is who Omar and Tlaib and these other characters are hanging out with. And not one word from our media, but there is a word from a very special person named John Guandolo. Before we go, John, tell our viewers how they can help you and follow you and support you.
Well, first of all, thank you. They can certainly help us by continuing to support you. We're at understandingthethreat.com. We encourage people to sign up for the newsletter. Most importantly, follow us and stay up to date. We're on Twitter at UTT_US, Facebook and YouTube, Understand the Threat. If you're able, join our Freedom 25 campaign. Donate at least $25 a month for 1 year. And I want to just remind everybody, if I could, Jamie, when I was with the DOD, we were in a 3-man group. We were the only ones in the West that briefed members of Congress about the upcoming Muslim Brotherhood revolution that took place in January 2011. And we did that over 2 months before it happened. Because of our training, just recently, prosecutors in Arizona were able to bring state terrorism charges on an individual that local sheriffs thought it was only an aggravated assault. Because of our training, police around the country have identified real Al-Qaeda terrorists. They have local police have stopped construction of mosques and other Islamic organizations because they've done the legal work to prove that these entities are criminal enterprises. This is what we bring to the table. It's all about winning the war at the local level, and that's who we are. That's what we do, and I really appreciate you giving me a chance to share and be on your show.
Well, we appreciate what you do, John, because bad times, we need heroes like you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And viewers of the Glazov Gang, when you finish watching this show, of course, tell people about the Glazov Gang, but make sure you go to understandingthethreat.com, tell everybody about it, and follow and support John Guandolo. We'll see you soon. Good night.